Welcome to Africa Event Connect, the podcast where we unpack the ideas and the people transforming the events and exhibition landscape across Africa. Today we're exploring a powerful question. How do we move audiences from simply attending events to truly participating in them? Now, my guest today is David Wilson, a tech strategist, a presentologist, who spent over 2 decades helping organisers rethink how technology and storytelling shape engagement. Now, he's delivered interactive experiences across 14 countries and is known for his clarity, creativity, and calm authority when it comes to turning data into design and participation into impact, which is what we all want. So, David, welcome to Africa Event Connect. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Projeni, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, before we start, I think I'd love for everybody to get to know you a little bit better. Now, you've been working at the intersection of technology and live experiences for a long time, right? Before event tech even became a buzzword, right? There's so many buzzwords these days. But what first drew you into this world? And I mean, what gap did you see that needed to be bridged between tech and human connection? Let's start there.
First of all, I think thank you for the introduction. It seemed like big shoes to fill when you say it like that. In terms of how I started, maybe jump into storytelling. I think, I was still largely a student doing odd jobs here and there, and I worked for a company where it was a global conference or international conference with international speakers and delegates. And I used a little tool, and if I'm allowed to name drop, it was called DigiVote,
Yes.
this little voting device. And I was absolutely intrigued by it because it was so fascinating to watch, the typical conference, and I hate to say it, mostly still today, is largely one direction in terms of conversation. So you have a speaker, they get up on a stage, and then they just talk. And you don't know what the audience is thinking, you don't know if they're actually tracking. And these little devices where it came out, they were enormous, like bricks. It was like quite a significant thing to unpack these things. And they would distribute them into the audience, and all of a sudden, the speaker or presenter could ask a question and get immediate feedback. And I was like, this is cool. This is something I could really kind of identify with.
Yeah.
And it was changing the game. And so that's where it began. And that would be way back, probably 2001, 1999, somewhere around there.
Wow.
And so, that's where the story began, I guess.
Now, was there a specific moment that shifted you to realize, okay, technology can play a greater role in creating engagement just based on the brick?
I don't know about so much of a moment, but because I'm still living in that moment, I think, 20 odd years later, is that there's still such a gap. And it's quite interesting. If you look at the research, you can research in terms of engagement and what are the top desires when it comes to learning and experience. It's still 30 years later, the desire, always top 5, is engagement. Yet people don't do it.
Yeah.
And for me, I like to talk, you know me quite well. And that's the one thing that was missing for most conferences is the ability to actually have a two-way conversation. And so that was where, I guess, our business called Participate Technologies participates in the name.
Yeah.
And it's about driving that experience. So not so much a gap, but an opportunity that we continue to try to fill. And I guess as the years have progressed, so the technology has changed.
Yeah.
But the desire hasn't.
Now, for those of our listeners that don't understand the technology in a little bit in that much of detail, probably you and I do, having worked with you through this as well at some points and utilized the tool, I think it was really fascinating. Gone were the days of, understanding how an audience feels by a raise of hands, right? Or a standing ovation. And all of a sudden, the press of the button. So do you want to just take our audience through exactly how that started? Press buttons and what happened?
Yes, I guess in its infancy, and the easiest way to describe it is because most people have watched the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Yes.
So what you have is you have a speaker or person in the front and you have an audience. Now each audience member has one of these little handheld devices.
Yes,
and then what happens is the speaker would ask a question, and then instead of assuming what the audience is thinking, they could ask the question, the audience can actually respond, and in real time you get the data or histogram that displays their thoughts. And so quite simply put, that's what it is. And 30 years later, it hasn't changed. And I think still today, it is as valuable now as it was then, and as needed now as it was then.
Didn't you find it interesting to see when that data started coming out? So not just, I mean, I loved it, the fact that not just the audience pressed the button and the people behind the scenes could say, well, 50% of them feel, yes, that they are definitely would like to go for morning runs, for example, and 30% would rather sleep in. It was the audience themselves got to see that live on the screen, right? So what do you think that does for an audience when all of a sudden, normally you often think that I'm the only one that thinks this, or everybody thinks this, right? How do you think that changes an audience's interaction with the content?
Well, there is so much evidence, and it's quite something. So, I may be stepping back out of the event space and moving more into the learning space. And so we also have supplied educational institutions with this technology for many, many years. And there is so much evidence, and there's many, I mean, I'm not an academic, but there's many papers that have been published on, engagement and the desire for it in the classroom environment. And so it comes to with how you engage with information.
Right.
So take a boring standard conference, and I don't want to insult anybody by saying that, but it's death by PowerPoint. A speaker gets up and they talk, and then it's like, well, how was that? You get a couple of claps and they walk off, but there's no measurement, there's no data, there's only assumptions. And so now what happens is that an instructor, a teacher, a presenter delivers content, and now your audiences, because they know they have a device or a technology, it could be an app, to now respond, they're anticipating. So they're listening with the intention of responding. So now instead of just actively or listening, you become active because you're now listening and processing, thinking about the information that's been shared, and then you generate a response. And then giving that response, you now get to see your response compared to that of your peers in the audience. And exactly that, there's the value. So instead of engaging with, from a learning perspective, information only once by listening, now you're actively processing. And that process increases the ability to retain that information. And I mean, to quote a local case study, many years ago, we did an exercise with Projeni University of Technology. And it was probably, I hate to say it, but the lowest engagement we had seen, but yet we still saw a 20% increase in the maths mark in the classroom, simply because the lecturers were using this technology and the students were then actively listening as opposed to just passively listening. So in many formats that has changed, and there's a lot more richer elements to that. I mean, you move from just simply that level of engagement to gamification, which is a whole other conversation.
Absolutely.
Around making learning fun.
Yeah, because you're stimulating that curiosity. It's not just about the technology alone, like you're saying. It sparks that real creativity and innovation and thought and inspires action. So it's entrenching itself deeper into the psyche, right?
Yeah.
Truly amazing. Now, I mean, you've watched this grow. You've watched this, like we said. I mean, you've been around a while as well as the printed feedback forms, and then you found the brick, and then there was, the little clickers, and now we're moving into mobile participation, right?
Yeah.
And that's been for a while now. But from your perspective, what's changed most in the delegates, in how delegates connect and interact and engage at events today?
I think it's, people are people. And we haven't necessarily changed that much, but we perhaps expect more.
Yeah.
So as times have changed, as we've progressed and there's more technology available, I think there's a higher expectation. And, we talk about event planning. It's like I'm thinking, from my perspective, that's an old word. We've moved past that. And we should move as event planners, event organizers, move from the conceptual thinking of event planning to moment planning.
Ah.
And so looking for creating moments of engagement, moments of curiosity, moments of memory, moments of experience. And not only do we talk about, ROI, like an ROI, like we must, return on investment. What about return on emotion? Because when it comes to decision making, you're kind of moving the conversation a little bit all over the place. But in terms of how we process information, how we store information, how we make decisions, those are made in the amygdala, the lizard part of the brain, where there is actual no reasoning. It's driven by emotion. And then we move from the emotional center of the brain to the logical center to try use evidence and reason to support the decision that we've made emotionally. And in that emotional space, once an event planner, organizer, starts to understand and think about that as a priority, you start to change the experience.
That is a fascinating thought. I love that. I mean, it's something that, you're right, as event organizers, event planners, event architects these days, if you want to call yourself that, but it's all made up of moments, and it's not just tick boxes, because so often we have a big plan, we have a list of things that we need to accomplish, but we're dealing with emotions and we're dealing with people through that. Now, you talk about creating moments, right? So because it's the moments that where we touch the emotional aspect of a person, and that's when they always talk about it's about how you make people feel.
Yeah.
Right? That was what is going to stay with them the most. But now how does tech get involved in this to create those moments? How can we use tech to create those moments?
First of all, don't let tech get in the way.
Because people are so scared of tech these days. At the same time, as much as we want to embrace it, it's scary, right? As AI evolves.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think at first it comes with knowledge of what's out there. So there is an element of responsibility for those planning the conferences, those who are organizing these big events, is to become au with what's out there.
Right.
And I think so many people chase features as opposed to chasing purpose. And so we have a technology, we supply event apps as well. And, so we must have an event app. And my first question is why? And it's surprising to see how many people don't necessarily know the answer. And it's like, we must have an electronic agenda, we have to be seen to be innovative. And I'm like, you got to find the purpose behind the technology. And that comes with, I guess, two perspectives. You've got to put your organizer hat on because you have deliverables from an academic or a commercial perspective that you want to, people need to learn this, or you need to achieve numbers if you're selling, depending on the purpose of the meeting. And so understand that first, understand those objectives. And then most importantly, understand your audience. So understand what their desires are. What do they want to experience? And then curate and design your program and agenda according to those desires, as opposed to just coming in with a technology or program. And I think that's so often it's like we're doing this because we've always done it this way. We don't take a moment to press the brakes and think about it like, well, what can we do differently? And I think with that, a bit of courage is required as well, because you got to be bold to step out and do something different. And often I see people are scared to do that. And so we default to safety. We default to what we know as opposed to doing things slightly differently.
Yeah. Now, can you share some examples of engagement formats that worked in the recent years? What made them effective, for example?
I think still today, for me personally, and based on our experience, the most powerful example is just the simple ability to have a live Q&A that's supported by electronic format. So what you do by doing that is give a voice to the voiceless. So, people like you and me are very comfortable to grab a microphone, stand up and talk. It's okay. It's second nature. But for many people, I think, they're nervous. They're introverted. They don't like the microphone. They don't like the spotlight. And you can't measure it, but I would love to know over the years how many incredible ideas have never come to the surface simply because there hasn't been a mechanism for someone to raise their voice and to say something of value. And so I think the most basic feature still, in my perspective, is still the most powerful, and that's the ability to do Q&A in a live environment and have the audience contribute together and then be able to upvote those items, because then you really are co-creating something. So you might have a conversation coming from a speaker, but the audience is responding with what they're thinking. And then it allows for a fluid, very dynamic conversation to be had. And you've got to be bold enough to do that. That we still have a lot of customers that want to moderate the conversation. I'm like, but why do you want to do that? You want to invite them, but then you want to read what they're going to say first, and it doesn't always transpire like that. So I think that's the most basic format, and probably still today one of the most powerful when used correctly. And then maybe just to touch briefly on gamification. It's so funny, and I've got kind of my learning hats on here as well in terms of our other business. Somewhere in the last 50 years, the education system failed us when learning became seen or positioned almost as a chore. So now, we have to go to school, we have to learn, we have to go to this conference. And if we lost the chore element and we kept the fun element, people will do it organically and you will get much bigger results, or much better results. And I think, gamification, and something that we're becoming quite well known for, and this is like the song I've been singing for 20 years, is to drive true engagement. You can use gamification. It doesn't matter who the audience is. People like to have fun. And I can give examples of different, like high-level corporate conferences with very senior audiences where we play games, and it's becomes the most memorable part of the conference. And I think it's a massive missed opportunity that so many organisers and planners overlook, because it doesn't have to be very complicated. But adding a layer of fun, it gives a different experience, a different perspective. And if I can guide the principle, my kind of definition of gamification is the application of fun to learning. And what we do with that is we use the tech as a backbone to drive desired behavior. Like if I can quote an example, like next week we're doing an event for SAP with some very good friends that have appointed us to assist them. And we've designed a little gamification app where we're driving desired behavior. So one of the elements is to create value for the booths and for the exhibitors. And so they have to go to the booth, they've got to scan the QR code and they get rewarded with points. Now the booth owner, so I guess as organisers, we are doing the job of taking the people to them.
Right.
They now need to engage with their potential customer. And so how they give them the QR code, is it a conversation? Do they have to answer something from the stand? Do they have to watch a video? Whatever it might be. And so we're using the gamification as a very simple mechanism to drive desired behavior. Then, for example, in the plenary sessions where the conversations or the presentations are going on, is that they got to look out for game codes. Are they going to be on the slides, or the speaker's going to say something, and then they need to answer a question. And then it's a very simple little, they get a reward. They get like a little confetti spray on their screen. Oh, well done, you got these points. And there's a leaderboard. And then they're going to be given merch.
And this is all driven via a mobile app.
Yeah, so we built a little customized little experience for that. And so, the structure is gamification. The questions are very, very basic. And then use the technology to support that. I mean, technology should be seamless. It should never get in the way, and it should always amplify.
Yeah.
I think the technology of the future is not going to feel futuristic. It's going to feel normal. That's how it should feel. It shouldn't get in the way. It should just be seamless. And so I guess the challenge to us as event planners, organisers, is to identify how we curate the story and the experience so that it is seamless.
I like what you're saying. I mean, it goes back to what you're saying earlier about creating the moments. The gamification allows you to create the moments. It also allows it an opportunity for people, again, to feel seen, heard, involved, actively involved in the moment.
Yeah.
And not think about it that I should have, I could have, I would have when I go home.
Yeah.
You feel there's a sense of fulfillment. But I also like that it also supports, as us as event organizers and planners, our key goal for networking during these business events. I mean, that is critical, because that's where you meet people, that's where your circle gets bigger, that's where the business gets done through the networking. And let's go into deeper there when we talk about networking, how event technology can help with event networking.
Well, I think there's two things. So first of all, if you think networking only happens at an event, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. I always look at events as a before, during, and after experience. So the moment that first email is sent for the event, so begins the brand experience.
That's true.
And so you can design a pre-event experience with the support of technology from a gamification perspective, as an example. And specifically talking networking. At conferences, we don't necessarily have time for networking. Yes, you can curate some space and there's a networking evening. Often people, if they travel, they'll go shopping, or they haven't been to the location, and so it's great to have, and I think we need to have it there. But networking needs to be so much more than that. There are some very powerful networking apps. I've got a very good friend, Tracy, who's got a great business, I'm sure you know, and,
Yes.
and they do business matchmaking. And I think that to drive networking is a very, very powerful tool. But you need to think more than just that event experience. You should be thinking the before, during, and after, and then have tools that allow people to engage. And I'll give you an example. We worked with a company, FMCG company, very big. They've got 2,000 products. They're a global brand, and they have a meeting once a year where they get their top 400 people together. And what we do is we do a very simple networking game, and it's amazing. We also don't give too many instructions. We let kind of FOMO drive the process. When they see this activity happening in the background, then it starts to get exciting. And each person has, a code, a question to be asked or something like that. And then, so if I come to you and I ask the right question and I get that code, I input it into the game and I get rewarded with points. So this example, in terms of the power of how technology can support conversations, there was 400 people, and we had generated, if I recall, and don't quote me because I'm guessing, I'm trying to remember, but I think it was over 1,600 connections were made. We measured by using the technology because each connection, they were rewarded with points, and so they accumulated points. So we then had a qualitative measure of how many conversations happened pre-conference. And if I recall, it was on average 4 connections per person. And I'm talking the top 400 people of an organization that's running in 9 countries across Africa and the rest of Europe and the world. And so that's where technology didn't get in the way. It was the amplifier of the experience and also kind of something to get them excited about it. They could see it because all of a sudden there's a buzz and people are walking around and they're having conversations and they're holding their phone and they've got the conference app out. And so it's very, very powerful, and that is so simple to implement.
And and very often people shy away from it because they think it's going to be too technically challenging, too much to coordinate, and they find every excuse not to, right?
Correct.
So you often speak about building future-ready events, right? And ones that are flexible, data smart, designed to adapt. But let's talk about how does that look like in practice, right? I mean, organizers make this mistake. They try to disguise they all future-proof their events too quickly, and they go from here to there.
Yeah.
And then their audiences start to shy away. So what simple changes can we make as organizers to start future-proofing or getting our events future-ready, building up to that?
I'd probably say, to kind of flip the question on its head, is that more important than that is to get to know your audience.
Yeah.
So don't become future-ready for the sake of trying to be future-ready. There's got to be a purpose and a desire and an objective behind it. And so understand your audience. Like if you are, and I mean, I can use an example. I try not to offend any of our customers, but you're working with a law firm, as an example. Law firms generally, historically, not a lot of young people, a lot of I call them like the BlackBerry Brigade. Like when we first came in and we did a conference for a law firm, many of the lawyers and advocates all had BlackBerry still, and I was like, okay, so we have our challenges. Yet it became one of our best case studies. We had 130 people, and in the 4 days or 3.5 days that we were at a conference, they generated 56,000 page impressions in the app. And this is, the average audience member was above the age of 55. And
that's
so,
impressive.
Exactly. And it was surprising. We had an intention, and I kind of had to trust the process and trust our experience. And I said to our client, I'm like, first of all, a huge respect for stepping out and trying this. And we had a couple of key things that we did to make it happen. But there was evidence that, it wasn't about the technology, it was about the objective and what we wanted to achieve. And so we planned that first. And then the technology became seamless. So in terms of being future ready, I think, be audience first, focus on them, focus on their desires, understand who they are. So, being future ready for a millennial audience might be a bit easier, or a zillennial audience, or whatever we're calling them, Gen Ys. You can have these events in the metaverse, and I've got colleagues in the industry that are doing some really cool stuff there, but that's going to fall on its face if you don't know your audience.
Yeah.
So, and don't, I think we get distracted by novelty. So like there's a cool thing, AI, everything is AI. I'm like, my gosh, I'm over it. Like if it's amplifying and it's helping, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But don't let it get in the way, and don't let the novelty distract you from the purpose and what you're trying to achieve and your kind of, your key performance indicators, your objectives, those types of things.
Yeah. I like that you keep going back to the audience. I think that's so important because like you said earlier, very often people do things, organisers do things, and they're not sure why they're doing it, but it's a tick box, you know. Sustainability, okay, we need to do this. Technology, innovation, we need to have tech. It's tick boxes, but you have to turn it on its head. I like that, to be able to say, does my audience need this?
Yeah.
What do they need first? And then see how you can fit your pillars that you're trying to support into the audience needs. Very, very important to always have that in the background. Now, and another key thing that technology helps us to do is obviously collect data, right? And everybody, I mean, it's a new buzzword. Like everybody understands the importance of data. In events, it's valuable because it helps us to create better experiences and better moments.
Yeah.
So how do you see us as event organizers using that data and to design our events differently to create impact?
I think first of all you need to collect it, and again it's surprising how many events don't collect data. And using technology allows you to create almost a digital impression or digital footprint of your entire experience. And so it's like people say, well, why do we need an event app? I'm like, well, what's the cost of not having one, first of all? It's like
good
a little bit of a sales pitch, but it's true. Like, I'm not talking about so if you're not measuring, you can't improve what you're not measuring. So, and then the second thing, yes, data is a big word, but again, for me, the word has little to no value. What you're to do is be collecting meaningful data. So which data are you going to collect that's going to have the highest impact on your ability to make decisions and to change and influence behavior and that type of thing? So and again, when it comes to just a simple survey, it surprises me how silly some of the questions are. It's like, was the food nice? Was the communication good? Like, what does that mean?
What are you going to do with it?
Instead of asking, how was it we communicate, like, what's your preferred medium of communication? Should we be sending you a WhatsApp? Do you prefer email? Should we be sending you, Instagram direct messages? So again, understanding your audience, understand how they communicate, ask the right question to get the right data that's going to help you implement the right tool for the right reason.
Yep.
So don't focus just on features, focus on purpose, and another thing perhaps to put on the table is that there is no single, or if you find one, please let me know, there's no single piece of technology or event app that has everything you need. So when it comes to, your events, is having the right tech stack. So driven again by objectives, what you want to have first and foremost, and then finding the technology that supports that in terms of being your backbone. But bringing this, back to the data element, it is of critical importance. As a small business owner, data is everything. Like you have to make data-driven decisions, and so the first thing is to collect the data and ask the right questions, and don't just do it for the sake of doing it. I think the other thing is that you got to see value. It's like people, why don't we get a good survey response? It's because your questions are terrible.
Yes.
People like, why am I answering this? And then the other thing is that people don't act on the data. So you ask, and then they give you answers, and then nothing changes. And so then you get lower responses.
Absolutely.
Like a little.
What's the point of collecting the data if you're not going to use it?
Correct. And then we gamify it. So we reward people with a game. So we make the completion of the survey part of the game we're playing, and you get points for it. And then we actually get a higher engagement rate.
Yeah.
And you get better data back.
I like what you're saying as well about the questions. Very often it's, how would you rate the event, right?
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What are you rating?
What are you rating, right? And then the next year it's, okay, so last year 80% of them thought they were neutral on it. So, and then this year 90%. So we've improved by 90%. How?
Yeah.
How?
So what does that mean?
What does that mean?
What is
Why?
the motive behind the person who scored you a 4, scored it a 5? Why did they do that? That's what you need to chase.
Yeah.
And so you have to have questions that articulate that information for you so that you can actually use it to make better decisions.
Exactly. So we need to drill down into the experiences that we crave so we can evaluate it better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest bugbear is, everybody loves to collect data. And then when they're planning their next event, they forget about it because they've ticked the box,
Yeah.
So if you're going to collect, because it is an arduous exercise, it involves a lot of time and effort. And like you're saying, ensuring that you craft the right questions so that you get the right information. But if you're just doing it as a tick box, you're wasting money, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's an opportunity there to use that data to transform it into something useful. In terms of, because when we look at events, so often we are insular, like, oh, we've got an annual event. So we bring people together every January, whatever day or month it is. But what happens between that January and the next January? So if you're asking good questions, you get good content. And instead of just having an audience for that, you're trying to build ultimately, like you have done very successfully with the various brands that you have, is building a community. And so use data to drive activities, engagement between the big events.
Absolutely.
So keep your audience closer to you. Give them a reason to engage as well. So they've got to see, and I think that's the big thing, is that so many event planners think about value for themselves and their organizer and perhaps their pocket or their customer's pocket. Think about value for the audience. What's their why? Why are they going to attend? Why are they going to answer? Why are they going to pay you with their money or pay you with their time? Understand that first, and then you'll start to get much better results.
Absolutely. Now, I think it sharpens your creativity. It allows you so many opportunities of data. So I love that. And using event technology, again, is how the easiest way to drive data quickly, efficiently, higher engagement, interactivity. Brilliant. It ticks all the boxes, but it's just about using it right. And we need people like you to guide us. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is this whole, the future of hybrid and phygital experiences. I mean, that's the next new buzzword, right? Where blending physical and digital event spaces is now phygital. So where do you think this evolution is heading on the continent, for example?
Gosh, who knows?
Do you think, does it allow us to become more integrated? Does it allow for better engagement compared to our previous experiences?
So, I mean, I think, the big pivotal experience in this kind of virtual world was COVID. It taught everybody what technology was already out there and what can be done. So I think there is huge value in it, and it can grow an experience, it can deepen an experience, and it can be done in a very cost-efficient way. So I think there's a lot of, particularly for Africa, I think there's a lot of great advantages to the digital world, as long as we create access. And, we do quite a bit of work in Africa. I'm actually going back to Zambia next month again. And with the likes of, Starlink giving access, high-speed, good quality internet access, all of a sudden these are becoming realities, and it is possible. But again, you've got to go to the question why are we doing this, what's the purpose, and where do we want to go with it. I think there is a huge cost to digital and virtual locally, that is, where we do an event and we do it hybrid because that's everyone's doing. We must do a hybrid event, and I think it's silly. Because if we just do hybrid for the sake of saying, we must have hybrid, your face-to-face actually gets nailed. We live in Johannesburg. We have so much traffic. People don't like driving. Yeah. And so sometimes you do a face-to-face and the person signs up, they register, yes, we'll be there. And then an hour before, actually the traffic's bad, I'm not going to pitch. And now I can go digital. So all of a sudden, as an event organizer, you invest in this beautiful venue, you've got all this event tech there in sight, you've got food, you've got catering, and, you have 10% of the people show. And so going back to it, I think it creates massive opportunities, and you've got to use it wisely for the right reasons. So understand what your objective is. I think, if you have a face-to-face event, start with a teaser that is virtual. So 1 week, 2 weeks before, get one of your speakers in, open up the floor to questions, get some excitement going. There can also be a last registration push, for your kind of last mile, or, last minute registrations. And then on site, I think, doing hybrid has huge value. An example we did. I mean, I'll quote the conference. It was the most amazing conference in 30 years that I've done. I literally hung out for a week with, rocket scientists. You know, we always joke as kids, oh, you're a rocket scientist, you're so smart.
Yes.
These guys, I was actually sitting with a guy. He was on his computer logging into NASA space stations because his job day to day is dealing with astronauts. And it was the most fascinating experience. And there they did virtual. And virtual was incredible because it's an academic environment. Budgets aren't huge. And so they had people all over the world logging in. So that's where the hybrid element created massive opportunity to grow from a 300-person experience in person to having several hundred people online all across the world. And they felt part of it, and we used the technology to drive engagement. So we had almost like a virtual room, and people in the audience could actually chat to people who were online wherever they were in the world. And so you had a really, really powerful space where, in that case, hybrid was amazing. And it wasn't incredibly expensive. It was just well planned and well executed. And so that works really, really well. So coming again to Africa, where sometimes traveling is a challenge and you're going to different locations. So the hybrid element works really, really nicely. But again, going back to first principles, what's the objective? What are we trying to do here? Don't do it just for the sake of checking a box, but have a real intention. And when you're going virtual, then all of a sudden you have cameras and then you've got footage that you can repurpose and reuse.
That's true.
Please don't go and publish like an hour presentation because nobody watches that. If you're like me, you probably from COVID still have an inbox of things you want to watch.
Yes.
And there's like 200-300 emails
I'll save
sitting.
that for
No,
later.
exactly. And you never get there. So if you do record it, go create a highlights package because I'll go watch a 10-minute snippet. And if it's really good, then maybe I'll go watch the full hour or whatever the presentation is. So what does the future look like? I don't think any of us know. I think the right future would be a seamless future where technology doesn't get in the way, that it amplifies, that it accelerates the process, and should never replace. For me, that's something that frustrates me. You know, if you look at AI, historically it was built to accelerate, improve, and assist. And now some of the philosophies are changing where people are starting to replace. I'm vehemently against that. But I think it is a huge accelerant in making us do a lot better, a lot faster, and a lot more so we can reach. And I think, Africa is the future. Just purely from a population perspective, Africa is the future and this is the place to be. And I love this continent and our people, and I think we have so many great opportunities. So if we use technology right, I think we will be the world power. I think it's possible.
It is.
But with technology, we can make it happen.
And like you're saying, digitally, there is so much accessibility on the continent as well.
Absolutely.
We're growing in terms of mobile technology, basically, as previously a developing continent, as it was seen, but the access to digital is huge because of the service providers that have been on the continent, and the take-up has been quick, right?
Absolutely, and it's accelerated access, and I think that's the whole thing. The conversation is different. 20, 30 years ago, it was about access to information. Now it's not about access because we have immediate access in real time to some of the greatest thought leaders in the world and the greatest information, all on our mobile devices.
Yeah.
And so I think from a policy perspective, our government and our African governments need to be creative in this space and say, how can we use this to accelerate our continent, accelerate the future, and do things in the right way. And with the right technology and the right people behind that technology, it'll be an absolute game changer.
Well, that's amazing. But as we round up, I just want to go over a few things with you. So if we are going to use technology to enhance our events, right? Just give us an example of what kind of engagement tools could we use today? I know you have, a whole pocket full that we could have access to. So there's so many. How do you know which one is right for your event? Do I just do clickers because that could be a simple way, or do I have a web app? Do I have a mobile app? Do I need an app? Do I need my own app? Can I use, there's so many questions. And how do we decide on these big decisions for us as event organizers?
It's quite a loaded question and probably not that easy to answer. To try to simplify it, I think, again, first principles. So start with objectives. What do you want to achieve?
Right.
So don't go tech first. It's always objective first.
Right.
Purpose first.
Got that.
And then once you understand that, list what you need in terms of actions and outcomes, and then go from there to find a technology that delivers on those things. And I think when it comes to your tech stack, what's important, I think, first of all, is curiosity. There's a little bit of risk taking, and you got to try and mitigate that. So when I say risk taking, I'm the person who always likes to try things that are new. And so I'm the first to try, like, well, let's see it. If it breaks, it breaks. We'll just see what happens. But there's a huge risk when it comes to events. Like, if you work out the cost per second or cost per minute of your event, you look at how much it costs for the venue, the spend on your suppliers, your vendors, then from a delegate perspective, salaries and your speakers. Yep. Like, it's a very, events are expensive. But, so saying that, time is crucially important, and so you want to do that moment planning because every second counts. But the technology needs to work because you can't afford downtime. And where I'm getting with this is that the right people to support it.
Yeah.
So appointing knowledgeable people that understand the game, understand your objectives, more than just understanding the technology and what it can do, but understanding what you're trying to achieve, I think is so, so important because you don't want to lose a moment. And so your question was what technology to use. I would say find the right technology that matches the purpose. So understand your purpose and what you're trying to achieve, and then make sure that the technology delivers on that. And then you might be looking at more than one technology. So I think the ability to integrate technology is so important. And so, like, when I look at a platform, I want to know is how can I bring in other tools to it? Because I'm yet to find a single platform that has all the answers. So, for example, the platform that we use has a very flexible element to it. So we can plug in tools that are missing. Like, we often get quite creative on the gamification. So we then plug in different gamification tools to deliver on the objective that we're trying to achieve to make it more fun.
Now, as a tech supplier, that's all very easy for you to implement. It's in your head, right? And you can easily see the solutions to the why and how we should create. But so how can organizers invite tech partners to become part of that creative process earlier?
Phone us.
Simple.
Well, I think there's, when it comes to your planning your conference meeting, identify the roles. So identify, you're doing an exhibition, or it's a conference and an exhibition, it's a trade show, whatever it is. Then understand the different roles that are required. And one of those is a technology expert. So, and, ChatGPT is incredible. Turn to it for advice. Say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm planning. What technology should I be looking at? And it'll give you the right, most often, the correct direction to move in. And then find local support, find local companies that can help you in your time zone. Because that's one thing we've seen, and there was a lot of lessons learned during COVID where suppliers went for the cheapest solution they could find because we are price sensitive as a country, as a continent. And the trouble is they didn't think about the support. So they saved, maybe they saved 30% on the price. But the thing is, then the event happened and it falls over, and there's nobody to support them that can speak English in their time zone. And so all of a sudden it actually ended up costing them significantly more. So, I think make sure that you have if you don't have a technology partner or somebody that can give you advice in technology, I think you're missing out and you will be left behind. So as part of your planning committee is that you need to have somebody that understands tech, that can understand your objectives and then find the right technologies to match that. So employ young people. Speak to your kids. Ask them what's going on.
Oh, that's great. David, thank you so much. It's really, really been a wonderful conversation about where technology meets moments and meets meaning. But if our audience wants to continue the discussion with you, where can they find you?
Participate.co.za, that's our website. You can speak to our chatbot or you can speak to a human. They're both there.
They're both quite effective.
Yeah, and I'd be very happy to help. I mean, this is a space that I'm still surprised at kind of the lack of knowledge in that. And I think as a parting thought, perhaps to the event organizers, and owners listening to this is I would encourage you to get out there and invest in the learning.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. And as an incredibly proud South African, we have an amazing, amazing industry, and we deliver incredible events, and we have such talent. I mean, I know I call them partners, the people we work with in our industry. We have phenomenal talent. It breaks my heart that when COVID hit, you see how many of us left and went, you know, the likes of Dubai and the US and the UK. But we have so much to offer. And, you know, as a destination, this is the place to be. We have, you know, it's very affordable.
Yeah.
And while it's affordable, we have incredible talent. You know, we deliver these international events all the time, and I love it because people come out, they're like, wow, this is the best experience we've ever had. I'm like, well, come back. You know, come back again and again and again. So, yeah, my parting thought would be get out there, invest the time to learn, because it'll make you better at your job, and you'll enjoy it more as well. Because, you know, we have this fear, and the only way to eliminate fear is knowledge.
That is so true.
So the more we know, the less fear we'll have, the better the conferences and events we'll put on, and more people coming here, and we'll build our industry together.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we're sure with suppliers like you around and with thought leaders like you, you're definitely going to help us make our events and exhibitions a better experience and better moments for everybody. So we truly, truly appreciate it. Thank you, David.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And to everyone listening, if this episode has sparked new ideas about how you can engage your audiences with event technology, share it with your peers, and let's keep this conversation going. You're listening to Africa Event Connect. From me, Projeni Pather, thank you for joining us, and continue to explore how great events don't just connect people, they connect possibility.